It's right after 1 Samuel, right before 1 Kings. 2 Samuel. Chapter 11. We're going to talk this morning and this evening about David. Looking at well-known Bible characters. You can't hardly talk about Bible characters with any kind of breadth and depth and not include David. David is known primarily for two stories. He's known for using a sling with which he knocked a giant down and took the giant's sword and cut the giant's head off with it and killed him. He's known just as much for this story that we're going to read and look at this morning and this evening. 2 Samuel chapter 11, beginning with the first verse. And it came to pass after the year was expired, and at the time when kings go forth to battle, that's in the late spring after crops have been planted, after the rains have subsided, when the weather is good. When kings go forth to battle, and you notice it says kings, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed, or they were destroying the children of Ammon, and besieged Rabbah, one of the chief cities. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in an evening tide that David arose from off his bed, been in bed all day long, and was walking upon the roof of the king's house. They had, as it were, a patio type roof on some of the houses of that day and time, and David's new palace, taller than the other buildings around, and you'd have fresh air and a good view. Okay, we'll read it some more. Walking upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, or taking a bath. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba or Bathshua?" It is in some places rendered that way. It means of the oath is what the name means. "Is not this Bathsheba the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Right there, just a lot of information. "And David sent messengers and took her. And she came in unto her, and he lay with her. For she was purified from her uncleanness." That can have a couple of different meanings. It can be rendered, "and she was purified afterwards." But it can also mean that she was at a period of time relative to her monthly cycle that rendered her extremely fertile. That's what many scholars believe. Anyway, she returned to her house. And the woman conceived and sent and told David and said, "I am with child." So some time has passed. And David sent to Joab, that's the captain of his army, David's nephew. We'll talk a little more about him. Saying, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent Uriah to David, and when Uriah was coming to him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. That's his pretense, you see. And David said to Uriah, "Go down to thy house and wash thy feet." That is, go home, get comfortable, spend time with your wife. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. That is, David sent over some food. We want everybody country, all this, want him and his wife to have time together. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And when they told David, saying, Uriah went not down to his house, David said unto Uriah, "Camest thou not from thy journey? Why then didst thou not go down unto thine house?" And Uriah said unto David, now listen to this, "The ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents." Of course, the ark's not with them. It's in his own tent that David has set up. "My lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As thou livest, as thy soul liveth," that is an oath there. He swears, "I will not do this thing." And David said to Uriah, "Tarry here today also, and tomorrow I will let thee depart." So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him. That is, David invited him, "Come eat with me and drink." And he made him drunk. And at evening he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, captain of the army, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter saying, and here's Uriah, so trustworthy here, he's not going to open it and read it. "Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die." And it came to pass, when Joab observed the city, they're fighting against Rabbah, that he assigned Uriah unto a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David. And Uriah the Hittite died also. Then Joab sent and told David all the things concerning the war, and charged the messenger. Now notice this. Joab is sharp. Joab is mean. Joab now has something on David. Joab sent and told David all the things concerning the war, charged the messenger, saying, "When thou hast made an end of telling the matters of the war unto the king, if so be the king's wrath arise, and he say unto thee, Wherefore approached you so nigh to the city when you did fight? Knew you not that they would shoot from the wall? Who smote Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast a piece of a millstone upon him from the wall that he died?" That's in the book of 1 Samuel. "But say thou, thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also." Oh, yeah. So the messenger went and came and showed David all that Joab had sent him for. And the messenger said unto David, "Surely the men prevailed against us, and came out unto us in the field, and we were upon them even to the entering of the gate. And the shooters shot from the wall upon thy servants, and some of thy king's servants be dead." and thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. Then David said unto the messenger, Thus shalt thou say unto Joab, Let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as another. Make thy battle more strong against the city and overthrow it, and encourage thou him. And when the wife of Uriah, notice it doesn't call her by name, calls her by title who she was. The wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead. She mourned for her husband. And when the mourning was past, which would have only been like a week or so, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. Power, prosperity, prestige. It's almost a cliche. I've heard it so many times. You've probably heard it so many times as well. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Prosperity and power and prestige are things that few people can handle in the long run. Just this week, the verdict came in the trial of Alex Murdaugh. There's a family that had power, prestige, prosperity for generations. You know, they had to cover up his grandfather's picture in the courthouse to keep from prejudicing the jury. With David, it was different. David is about halfway through his 40-year reign. David is 50-ish. Probably toward mid-50s at this time. He's had a hard life. David got a lot of abilities in various ways. He's a musician. He's a poet. He's a warrior. He's an expert with a sling, or was at one time when he was younger. Good-looking young man. Ruddy. Youngest in his family. Valiant man of war. And the song was, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And all the girls out there when they came back from war. Lots of opportunity. Lots of privilege. And David has had to struggle for everything he's got. It's interesting from generation to generation. Now, by the way, there's a really good book Edwin Friedman wrote named From Generation to Generation. It's interesting to study family systems and how things work. And in families where there's prosperity, the first generation that had to do the work are quite different usually from the next succeeding generations that are the inheritors. But sometimes it starts in that first generation. When prosperity comes and there's power and there's prestige, prosperity, then things get easy. David was a fugitive, and King Saul wanted to kill him for a long time, and he was hiding in caves and places. Gathered him a band of mighty men. Guess who two of those mighty men were? One of them was Uriah the Hittite. Another one was Eliam, the father of Bathsheba. Uriah the Hittite was not an Israelite. He was a mercenary, a foreigner. Might have been converted to the faith of Israel because he had such respect for the ark and the people and I can't go into my house and to my wife and the ark is in a tent along with Joab and all the soldiers. The higher you are, the harder you fall and the harder you hit when you land. David has now arrived at the pinnacle of his life. And it's downhill from here on with David. From here on in 2 Samuel, from 2 Samuel 9 all the way through 1 Kings chapter 2 that records the death of David, biblical scholars call this section, they call it the succession narrative. Because the focus quickly shifts after this story to the story of who's going to succeed David. And there are revolts and rebellions and attempts to do a coup d'etat. More than one, and it comes from David's family mostly. And there are others who rise up who were kin to King Saul, who seem enabled by the weakness of David in the wake of all of this. And it's a shame. Though David is seen as the model for all the other kings of Judah, in a lot of ways, he missed God's best because he messed up big time. And he did everything he could to cover it up, but it was public. His servants knew about it from the beginning. And the reason we read about it now from this succession narrative is because the thing became well known. The prosperity and power and prestige. I want to talk to you about the danger, the peril of that. And we look here and we see the peril of prosperity is the first thing I want you to notice. Israel is stable. The Philistines are subdued. David has built him a palace a chapter or two earlier. David has wanted to build a temple for the Lord right before this. David has brought the ark that's been at somebody's house for a generation. He's brought it finally, successfully, second try, into Jerusalem. It's the time of the year for conquest. David is building and has amassed a small empire. In fact, during David and Solomon's reign, David built the empire, Solomon inherited it and developed it. Second generation prosperity there, if you want to take a study of that. David can coast a little bit. You know what the problem with coasting is? It only works downhill. That's the problem. David is coasting. They're fighting against the Ammonites, who are descended from Lot, Abraham's nephew. They're all kin. They're over across the Jordan River on the east bank, fighting in the territory of Ammon to get control of them, to add to the empire and to the prosperity and to the power and prestige. David doesn't go. Sends Joab And all Israel, all the army. And see, the army is militia. They have farms. They have tribal allotments. They have to plant their crops. And so after the crops are planted, after the spring rains, that's the time when kings go forth to war. But this king didn't go forth to war. He stayed home and got defeated. The peril of prosperity. First thing I notice is a lot of free time. David is in the bed and he should have been in the battle. He stayed home and he stayed in the bed all day long and got up in the evening. That's not a good sign, is it? You know, we live in a time, and some of this we can blame it on COVID, but you can't hardly find people that'll get out and go to work. And it's been made so easy in various ways. I mean, you can get a college degree, graduate degree. You don't even have to get out of the bed. You can do it right there. Lay your laptop on a pillow or use your cell phone even. By the way, a degree and an education are not the same thing. Going through the first grade 12 times doesn't equal a high school education. Look at all the free time. Look at the idleness. He got up. He is tired of being tired. He is tired of resting. David, still at Jerusalem, got up about eventide off his bed, took a little stroll on the roof of his house, and we see a convenient enticement. His flat roof is taller than everybody else's because he's the king and it's his palace and he's had it special built. Lined with cedar from Lebanon. And he looks out and he got a nice view and it's cool and sun going down and he hears splashing water. And maybe he hears a woman's voice singing in the tub. And he takes a look. And another look. And a longer look. And keeps on looking. Enough to know the woman washing herself was very beautiful to look upon. Yeah, they had them back then too. Now in the story, no blame is assigned to the woman. A couple of reasons. Number one, the story ain't about her. This is the preface to the succession narrative. And everything that happens after this in David's life is connected to what went on in this story. Now, the woman is not without guilt, okay? However, we need to consider that women didn't have lots of rights in that day and time. Women were largely property. It's interesting in the Bible how much power they wield. Sarah could get Abraham to do what she wanted done, get rid of Hagar and that boy. And he did. Rebecca and Leah, Rachel and Leah. They could decide who Jacob was going to spend the night with. Lots of power, but it was not overt. And there weren't any structures to protect them. There were no sexual harassment laws. Nothing like we have today. However, she knew how tall and how close the palace was. She knew if she set her tub out there on top of her house, next to his house, she knew the king was home. Maybe that plays into why Uriah never went home. There's always more than we are told that's possible. But there, the last place that David would think that temptation would come to him was right there at his own house, at the portico off his bedroom. And he saw this woman. And that's all it took. Now, just think about this. One of the things when he's indicted, and we'll see that tonight. David's got lots of wives. He's got lots of porcupines, concubines. When he became the king, the ones that Saul had became his too. In fact, you don't have to turn there, but if you look back in 2 Samuel 5, along verses 12 and 13, we're told that David perceived that the Lord had established him on the throne of all Israel. See, he wasn't king of the whole country to start with. He's king in in Hebron over the tribe of Judah for 7 years. And then the whole country came to him. The rest of them came and made him king over everything. And he came and conquered Jerusalem from the Jebusites. They were a Canaanite people. Took a neutral city that none of the tribes controlled and made it his capital. Pretty sharp. But we're told in 2 Samuel 5 that he took more wives and concubines. It's interesting if you look at the book of Deuteronomy, and by the way, this book of the Bible, Joshua and Judges and 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings are known as the Deuteronomic history. It's the history of Israel told from the point of view of the theology of Deuteronomy that emphasizes blessings if you keep the covenant, that is, worship only the Lord. Curses if you break the covenant, that is, worship other gods. But it gives all kinds of instructions for how they're to conduct themselves in the promised land. And in Deuteronomy 17, there are explicit instructions for later on when they will have a king. And 3 warnings that the king is not supposed to do. He's not supposed to multiply horses for himself. And of course, no record of horses in Israel until the time of Solomon. He had chariot cities that were just for his cavalry and his horses. Shouldn't multiply horses. Number 2, shouldn't multiply wives. One's a plenty. Shouldn't multiply wealth. David has at least done 2 out of 3. Free time, idleness, convenient enticement. By the way, the world says indulge your passions. And that'll keep them in check. You know what happens when you indulge them? It makes them stronger. Yeah. The more you use them, stronger they are. Never enough. And then you have people like that guy that bought an island and was farming out teenage girls to celebrities, enslaving them, and somehow died a mysterious death in a penitentiary. Actually in jail somewhere. I don't think he'd had his trial yet. Indulging your lust is not the way to control them. Indulging your lust is the way to lose control of them. No, it's never enough. And it's true with money, it's true with gambling, it's true with drugs, it's true with alcohol, it's true with sex, it's true with any of the fleshly lusts. They'll kill you, they'll destroy your family. And they'll rob you from the peace and joy of the Lord. That path does not lead to God or godliness or blessing. You can't sin your way into the blessing of God any more than you can eat your way into losing weight. I've tried. Look at the pursuit of passion is the second point. We see the peril of prosperity. We see the pursuit of passion. David has fired himself up with all these wives. There's at least 8 that are named in Scripture that he accumulated before he even got to be a king. First one was he got as a prize for killing Goliath. Michal, Saul's daughter. And then Saul took her away and gave her to somebody else. And then David come and tried to take her back. It was just all kind of mess. It ain't just in Hope County that you have that kind of stuff. It's in Georgia too, we found out. And it's in Israel, and it's everywhere, and it's always been. It's just considered cool today. And it's encouraged, and the barriers are being broken down, and all kinds of perversity. Same sex, choose your own sex, whatever. Everything's good. It'll all kill you. David saw, verse 2. David sent. And he inquired after the one, find out who that is. And his servants did some when they came back. Oh, she's married. She's the wife. Right there. She is a wife. She's the wife of Uriah the Hittite. That's one of your soul, one of your choice, one of your elite guys. He's listed. I mean, you can. The last verse of chapter 23. He's the last one of the mighty men of David's elite forces to mention. Her daddy is listed up in verse 34 of that same list of David's mighty men. By the way, she has a granddaddy named Ahithophel. If you're getting ready to have a grandchild, there you go. Ahithophel. I wonder if they called him Hith or Phil. Ahithophel is one of David's counselors that he relies upon for wisdom and direction. Ahithophel is that woman's granddaddy. How you like if somebody took your granddaughter and did what David did with her? He didn't like it either. We're not told about Eliam. In fact, we're not told anything in detail about him. But Ahithophel, later on, one of David's sons named Absalom wants to take the kingdom away from his daddy. That tells you what a loving home they have from here on. Later, when Absalom wants to take the kingdom away, guess who joins him? Ahithophel. Bathsheba's granddaddy. Only he doesn't tell David, I'm leaving to go join the camp of Absalom. No, he stays right there and gives David false advice. He's a spy for Absalom in David's cabinet. Wonder why he would do that. All you got to do is look at Bathsheba and what happened to her and her husband. I mean, one of the punishments we'll see tonight is that the sword will not depart from his house, but the sword is more. It's broader than just his family. You can't be above what's right and wrong and operate that way with impunity. You cannot do that. And you can't do it in this life for very long. You'll make as many enemies as anything else. It's interesting. Those people in South Carolina lowland area, you know, they've been 5 deaths connected with that family over the last few years. And some of those other investigations are getting reopened and take another look. In some of them, they never really took a look because of the Murdaugh family. If you read the story of David and think about what's been in the news and read read up through chapter 2 of 1 Kings, you'll see a lot of parallels. There'll be people coming out of the woodwork that just been biding their time. Some of them from King Saul's connections. And of course Joab, who is the captain of the army, he's also David's nephew. David's sister was Joab's mother. There's 3 of those boys. There was Joab, there was Abishai, and Asahel. We don't know much about Abishai and Asahel except they were good fighters. They're in the mighty men too. Asahel was a fast runner. And after King Saul was killed, Abner was captain of his army. Joab killed him deceitfully. Smote him under the 5th rib and left him laying in the road to bleed to death. Yeah, those things happened then too. But Joab, if you study 1st, 2nd Samuel and 1st, 2nd Kings, there's nobody anywhere other than maybe King Ahab that was meaner than he was. Jezebel meaner than all of them, but talking men here. Joab in this story gets some information to hold over David's head from now on. Yeah. So we have the pursuit of passion. It was a one-night stand. Very clear. Verse 4. Sent messengers, came in, lay with her, purified from her uncleanness, unknown to David. Peak of her fertility. Only took one time, one night. She went back to her house, all in the same verse. And the woman conceived, and this would be a couple of months anyway. She sent and told David, I am with child. Third thing, this is what we're going to close with today. The prompting of panic. David had his fling with her. She went back home. David thought it's all over with. Everything's good. Nobody's going to know. See, here's the thing. When a saved person, David, a man after God's own heart, knew the Lord, sweet psalm singer of Israel, the Lord is my shepherd, etc. When a saved person veers off the track to satisfy our passions, what happens to us when we do that? We forget all about God. David forgot all about God. Oh yeah, he went on back to did the sacrifice, all that religion stuff. But his walk with the Lord, he was taking a complete hiatus from it. And God wasn't entering into any of his decisions. He was pursuing his passions. He never thought about what God was going to say or do. Wonder why we don't do that in the heat of the moment. Whatever the temptation is. You know what it says? It says this didn't start that day, you see. This started years earlier in David's life. You can trace it back. When he started multiplying wives, after he got the second one to add on and started building him a harem. He's going in a dangerous direction. And as he's gotten prosperous and he's not had to struggle, he's not had to pray. Not in any depth. Adversity builds faith. Prosperity, if we're not careful, destroys it and hinders it. The prompting of the panic. It's the rest of this chapter. First, we see a deceptive plan. Today, he'd be getting on his cell phone. Joab, send Uriah back. Give me word about the war. Sends for Joab. Sends for Uriah. Joab sends him. Tell me about the war. Okay. I just wanted it from somebody that I know and love and trust. You've been fighting hard. You're a faithful man. Go home, spend time with your wife. Wash your feet, get at your table, spend time with your wife. A lot of time with your wife. Uriah never goes home. He spends the night just outside the door of the palace with the guard of David. The servants of David is equivalent to David's personal guard. Uriah probably knows them, fits right in with the military style, stays right there. The next day, David finds out Uriah didn't go home last night. And David summons Uriah, says, okay, thinks to himself, we'll try another attack. Uriah, I heard you didn't go home last night. Well, Uriah said, how can I? The ark of the Lord is in a tent here in town. Joab and the army are camping out in the open field. And all of the army, all my buddies, how in the world could I come home and lie with my wife? Which is what David wanted him to do. And it's the pink elephant in their conversation that Uriah doesn't probably realize at all. Perhaps. So David says, well, stay here today and rest up, and tomorrow, and then I'll send you back. David thinks, yeah, get him drunk tonight. He'll be hung over tomorrow and sleep late with Bathsheba and won't know all what happened or didn't happen. Send him back the next day. David brought him into the palace, had him for supper. They had drinks all around, all around, all around, all around, all around. Uriah's drunk. Now stumble on home to your wife. And he stumbles on out the door and sleeps where he slept the last night. Never goes home. It's a wake-up call for David, isn't it? But what does David do? He writes a letter, rolls it up, puts his signet in the wax, sends this little scroll with Uriah back to Joab, put him on the front lines of battle in the hottest part of the battle, and everybody withdraw from him, and so he'll be killed. Joab does this. Then Joab sends word back. By the way, Joab wasn't the only one killed that day. David's doings cost several, maybe numerous lives. Everything we do affects other people. Joab sends word back. He's got something on David. Tell him about the battle. Tell him about all the casualties. Tell him we've had a hard fight. And it's a tough go. And Joab knows that David's not going to get on to me too hard if we lose. Because Uriah's dead. He doesn't know the whole story yet. But he has something to hold over David later on. And you can bet your bottom dollar, if you're a betting person, which I hope as a Christian you're not. But you better know that he plays that to the hilt. By the way, later on, when Absalom usurps the throne, guess who kills Absalom? It's Joab. And he knew that David ain't going to do nothing to me. Yeah. How far we fall when we fall from the top. Power, prosperity, prestige. We better, if we ever get anything like that in our lives, whether it looks like the Murdoch family or compared to how we used to have it, the more prosperity we get, the more careful we better be. And you'll find that David paid dearly. Yeah, the Lord forgave him as soon as he confessed his sin. But the wheels were turning. Just like your wheels are turning. And my wheels are turning. And just because we get forgiven doesn't mean that all the wheels that are turning in our family and in our work and in our lives and all the stuff that we've set in motion, the dominoes still going to be falling out there. It does not work to sow wild oats all week and then go to church and pray for a crop failure. It never works that way. And David paid the rest of his life. And his family paid the rest of their lives. And his country paid the rest of their lives. Yeah. We're put here to influence. To influence the people around us to trust in the Lord. And how you really live and how I really live, that is a proclamation to the world. This is what Jesus can do for you. Would you like some? What wheels are turning in your life? What kind of choices are you making? Too much free time. Too much idleness, too much laziness, stay in the bed all day. Open season for temptation. If you're a Christian and the Lord is speaking to you about your life that you need to make some changes, why don't you come talk to Him about it, because you can't fix it. He can, but you can't. If you do not know the Lord,